There we go. Why is that weird? Okay. Go in. Hi everyone. A little late getting started. Is this okay? Getting there. Message this. Getting things in position to where I need them to be. Okay. I think I'm good. Before I start any project, I am going to fix my yarn because I've been making a couple samples and my yarn has been pulled out of my cake. So I will show you how I make these cakes. I don't have a store-bought skein of yarn on hand, but you could do the same thing from that. There's nothing wrong working from a skein of yarn. I just find it easier to work from a cake because they don't roll around the room and you can stack them. We're gonna, that's not, why is that not letting me zoom? Okay. Guess I can do zoom. Feature for some reason is not working, but that's okay. So I'm going to use this. This is a yarn ball winder. This is just one style. They have other ones that they're all pretty much similar. They're going to look a little different, but they're all going to work the same way. It's got a clamp here on the bottom, and this one I got to clamp it, and you clamp it to a table. And this is not going to be the best camera angle, so ignore this part. But I don't have any other way to do this. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing X-rated. It's not that type of stream. Okay, so you take your yarn, your end of your yarn, either from a cake that's already been wound, or from a full regular scanning yarn. I wish I had one in hand to show you. What I do is I just put a little simple knot on the end, and that'll come in handy in a second. First of all, we've got our guide hook here. Hey, Ghoul Mist. This is our guide hook. This here is our spindle, which the yarn is going to be wound on. And here on the front closest to me is the crank handle. That's all it is. So what we're going to do first is we're going to put our yarn through our guide hook. And it's just a little curlicue piece of metal. And you're going to go through the curlicue, and this will keep it at the right angle to feed into it. On the top of our spindle here, it's got notches, and that's where that knot that I put on the end is going to come in handy. and you're going to put it in both those notches, but I put the knot on the outside there so it won't come undone. This will end up being the very center of the ball of yarn. It's angled here to form a specific pattern as it wraps around, and it will enable it to be easily pulled from the center. So with my one hand, I'm going to hold it here gently. I'm not going to press real tight with my finger and thumb. I'm just going to guide it. And with my other hand, I'm going to turn the crank. And you can't really see, it's probably a bad angle, but you can kind of see here. See how it's kind of going, it's wrapping it around at an angle? That is because this thing is pointed at an angle. And I already got a knot in this. I'm glad my floor is not too dirty. Don't mind my feet. So, this is just real quick, just to show you how a yarn ball winder works. And as I'm going, it's just wrapping it around the outside of it. After I wind this is just maintenance to keep it tidy. After I wind this, I'll get into the project that I'm going to show you, or the stitch pattern that I'm going to show you today. A couple of them. It's going to basically play off of last time, the other day when we were on, when I was doing the granny square. It's in the granny square family. I'm just looking down at the floor because my ball of yarn is on the floor, just to make certain there's no knots or whatever. I've done this chatting with other friends, not on Twitch, on video, and my one friend was mesmerized with it, and my other friend said it looked like I was rolling rolls of toilet paper. So I've come here at the end, and then this tail here I'm just going to wrap around, and I'm going to tuck it in to some of the previous wraps. It doesn't matter where. That's just to anchor it so the outside doesn't come undone. Hey there, big cup cuddler. And then here, we have it wrapped onto our spindle now to take it off. Now, if you had the paper banding that comes on a lot of things of yarn, that's where you would roll it up. You would fold it up and roll it up and stick it here. But I don't have a banding for this one. So I'm going to remove this from the spindle, and I'm going to keep this out. Again, if I had the paper label, which this is one of them, not for this yarn, but I would stick it here, and then that way the information for the yarn will stay with it. I don't have a label for this one, so it doesn't matter. And then we're just going to gently pull it off the spindle, and now we have a cake. We're going to readjust our camera. And we're going to take, thank you. I just wound a yarn cake. I'm just going to take the machine off and set that to the side. That's just a tool that you don't have to have, but it does make things easier. And that's how I wound that one and all of my balls of yarn. It kind of does look fancy, but again, like I said, it keeps it in place. There's something else that you could use, and they come in different types of materials. They come in, and this is to keep it from rolling around and getting away from you. you could use something like this. This is a yarn bowl. This happens to be made out of, this is like a stoneware ceramic. But they also come in plastic, wood, different types of thing. It's just a regular bowl, but on the side here, it's got a notch. And oh, that's going to be too dark. You're not going to see that. Imagine a ball of yarn, like a regular ball. And I'm just going to use this so you can see it. But imagine this that this was in a ball. You would take your working piece of yarn and put it through this notch that's cut out in the middle of your ball, so it's there. So I'll show you it like this. So when you pull and work on it, it'll roll around in the bowl and not halfway across your room. But you don't have to have one of those if you've got a ball winder or a cake winder that you can make these. They'll sit on your table, and again, they can stack on a shelf. That was just that real quick. Let me check one other thing. Okay. Tuesday, when we were on, I made a granny square. Basic square. And I had a viewer, and I don't know if they're here. Clean Miko asked me if I could make them hexagon shaped or octagon shaped. And the answer is yes. And I was kind of explaining how that's done without actually having a sample. Well, we have a sample. There's our hexagon. And then we have an octagon. In addition to that, you could do a pentagon or a star. I don't have an example of one of those, but there are many different patterns for that. You can also do a round circle. Now, you're going to have to believe me, but this here, it's really large. This actually is a circle. But I will move this. There, you can see the circle pattern. This just happens to be really big. But you can do a complete round shape. We're not doing circles tonight. We're going to start with our hexagons. That's not what we need. So we're going to get our usual orange yarn that we've been using all month to decorate. Again, I promise it's not the only color I use. But to start, we're going to do a simple slip knot, like we normally do. And we're going to chain 4. And I wish I could zoom in. I really need to get that to zoom in. Let me see if I can work this. Bear with me a second. I gotta fix my video. The top-down video is gonna go away for a second, or it's gonna freeze at least. Oh, here we go. Now I can zoom in. So, we're going to do our slip knot around our hook. Again, the easiest way I teach people, and I'll show this again, if you're learning and you don't know how to do it, you put your yarn like this, you wrap it on itself, and then you take that tail and you put it underneath that loop, and you kind of form somewhat of a pretzel shape. And you hold both ends, and you put it into this loop, but under that first string, and hold both ends with your other hand, and pull tight, and you got it. So now we're going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then we're going to slip stitch into the very first chain to form a loop. Because again, we are crocheting in the round. So we have our loop here, and you really can't see it. But you kind of see my finger through the center of the loop. You're going to want the center. But first we're going to chain 3. That counts as 1 double crochet. We're going to wrap our yarn and go into the center of the loop. And also, when we do this, we're going to, our starting tail. Okay. You want me to go back further than this? I can start over. Okay, we'll start over. So we're going to do our slip knot. Put our hook on the slip knot. And then we're going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 chains. Then we're going to put our hook into our very first chain we made. And we're going to do a slip stitch. We're going to grab this yarn, bring it through the chain, and then through the loop that's already on the hook. And that forms a ring. Kind of see my finger right in the center of the ring. Okay, so we got our center, and I'm just putting my finger in there to hold it so I actually know where the stitches are going to go. And now we're going to do double crochet, but to get there we have to chain up to get to that height. So we're doing double, so we need 3 chains. 1, 2, and 3. That counts as a double crochet. And I'm just grabbing my original tail from when I made the ring, and I'm going to lay it against the ring that I made here in my hand. So I'm going to lay it against this. Okay? So now we have 1 double crochet here. We need 2 more. We're going to start it the same way. The very first little bit is going to be the same way that you make a granny square. So we have 1 there. We're going to wrap our yarn, because we're doing a double crochet. You wrap it first. You go into the center of the ring. And again, we're catching that tail, this tail that's here, that we started with, catching it. So it's going to be hidden in our work. So we're not going to have to go back and weave those in. We're going to yarn over and bring it through. And now we have 3 loops on the hook. Yarn over, bring it through the first 2. We now have 2 loops on the hook. Yarn over through the last 2. That's a double crochet. So we have an actual double crochet, and our first chain our chain of 3, which counts as a double crochet. Now we need one more double crochet. So we're going to yarn, we're going to wrap, put it into the ring. Again, still catching that tail from the center of the ring. Yarn over, bring it through, 3 on the hook, yarn over, bring it through the first 2, yarn over through the last 2. Now we have 3 double crochets here. This is, hey North Fairy, it's the same happy color all month. So we have 3 double crochets together. That is the first cluster. So, hexagon. Hexagon has 6 sides and 6 corners. Well, when we were doing the granny square, the square, each cluster was a side. So we had 4 clusters to start with. Well, hexagon is 6, so we need 6 clusters. So after a cluster always comes a corner. So in this corner here, we would do 2 chain stitches to make the corner. We're going to do 2 chain stitches to make this corner. 2 chains, not the wrapper. Okay. You didn't miss much. You missed me winding this into a cake. And then, it's not that advanced. It's just ones. It's because the other day, somebody we know, Clay Miko, asked me if we could make hexagons or octagons when I was making squares. We're doing hexagons right now. So we're starting it the exact same way that we started the square. The 4 chains, the cluster of 3 double crochets, and 2 chains for our corner. Now we're going to do another cluster. Hey, Clay Miko. You could do a septagon. You can't do a Decepticon or an Autobot. Hopefully there'll be some nerds in here that will get that reference. Or old people that will get that reference. So we've done our 2 chains as our corner. And now we need another cluster of 3 double crochets. So I'm just going to do 1. The whole time I'm trapping the tail in with my stitches. A Decepticon are the bad guys from Transformers. Two stitches and 3 stitches. So now we have 2 clusters. You tried them yesterday. It takes practice. It takes practice. And then, like, same way when I taught you regular, ordinary rows. The first time somebody laughed at my joke. Just like when I taught you how to do rows. When you first start, it looks like crap. The more practice you get, the better you get at it. Okay, so we have 2 clusters. Now we need another corner. So we're going to chain 2. And we're going to make another cluster. We're going to do a total of 6 clusters. Yeah, we'll have to do that. We'll have to figure out a time. Maybe after the holidays or whenever. I'm busy tomorrow. I've got cleaning and stuff to prep for this weekend. Okay, so now we have 3. And you keep moving around so you can make space for your clusters. So I have 3 clusters there. I'm about halfway done our hexagon. So you kind of have to move around that ring. Yeah, I gotta clean, and I gotta bake something. There's a few little last minute decoration things to do. I gotta vacuum. Okay, so now we have 3 clusters. 1, there's a corner. 2, a corner. 3. Now we need a corner. So 2 chains and our fourth cluster, which again, each cluster is 3 double crochets. 2, 3. Now here we would stop and do a corner and join if we were going to do a square. We're not doing a square. We got to just ease it in so we can get 2 more clusters in there. When we do the octagon later, it's going to be a different beginning because it's going to be too many clusters in there. You could do 6. I don't think you could do anything more than 6 clusters in this. The center has to start off differently. So we got 4 clusters. 1 cluster, 2, 3, 4. So we need a corner. There's our corner. Another cluster. 1, 2, and 3. And the whole time I'm doing these, I'm going right into that center hole of that beginning ring. So we've got 5 clusters. So we need a corner, which is 2 chains, and then our last cluster. 1, 2, and 3. And there's a lot of stitches going into that center there. So it gets a little difficult sometimes to get your hook in there. And this yarn is a little bit lighter, a little bit thinner than the gray, so I should have used a smaller hook, but that's okay. And now we did our last cluster, but we still need a corner because we start with a cluster. So we're going to do 2 chains, and then we're going to slip stitch into the top of that first chain stitch that we did. And now we have a hexagon. And you'll have to play around with it, make it the right shape. Just like we did with the granny square, each round you want to work your way to a corner. It's just easier to work in a corner. So I'm going to slip stitch to this next corner. If I can find where the stitches are. So I'm going to go in the tops of these stitches and just do a slip stitch, do another slip stitch, and a third slip stitch. So we're in a corner. Same thing, when we, on a square, we get to a corner. Big Cub Cuddler, we don't mention that username. That username is banned. Okay, that depends on your yarn and your hook. Depending on the material of your yarn and the material of the composition of your hook. Yes, that's normal. And that's also, you're probably like me, you might be a tight crocheter. I stitch my crochet stitches on the tighter side. So that's why I always need to go up a hook size or 2. Yes, you need some butter. So, now we're at a corner, and in a corner, we put in a cluster, because we're building it up to form that corner. So we're going to do just like we do with the square. When we get to a corner, we do a cluster, then a corner, then a cluster. The exact same thing, except now we've got 6 corners to do instead of 4. Yep. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you're making a blanket or a scarf, that really doesn't matter. If you want something a specific size, that will matter. But like if you're doing a garment that's fitted, like a sweater, and you need an exact size, you're going to have to compensate for that. Either use a different size yarn, go down a size, a thinner yarn, or go up a couple sizes in hook to get that gauge. And previous video, early on, a couple weeks ago, I did a little brief lesson on gauge. I usually don't worry about gauge too much because I don't really make anything that's fitted. I don't make sweaters. I think the only thing that I made that I had to worry about the exact size, the exact measurement, and Clay Miko, I don't know if you remember, and you probably do, those gloves. And I will never, Dust nor Fairy, I will never make gloves ever again. And I made them for you, and we figured out our hands were almost the same size at the time. So I could use my hand as a gauge. I didn't actually measure. Never again. Never, 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 never again. Okay, so we're at the corner, and now we have to do a cluster. So we're going to chain 3, because that is our, again, we need to get the height for what we're going to do. And that counts as our first double crochet. And then we're going to double crochet 2 more to make our cluster. But we're at a corner, so we want our corners to constantly go out, just like our corners of our square keep growing out as we go. So we're going to need to do 2 stitches there, 2 chains. And then, and again, the whole time, we're stitching in that crochet space, that chain space. We're not stitching into any of the previous stitches. We're stitching into the chain, the open space. So you don't have to worry about finding the individual little strands and getting in there. It's not like that. It's much more forgiving. So now we're going to do 3 more double crochets, because that's 3 double crochets equal a cluster most times. It doesn't always, depending on the pattern, but most likely it's going to be 3. And now we're at a side, because we're here on the previous row, it's a cluster. So we're going to do a single crochet, a single chain, and then in the next chain space where my finger's poking through, we're going to do a cluster of 3 double crochets. What's that about the clusters, Clay Miko? You want me to do that over? Can I show the clusters? So, I'll show you real quick. Yes, it does look like a bite of a pumpkin. So, again, when I started here, my second round, I did 3 chains, which equals a double crochet, did 2 more double crochets to form a cluster, then I did 2 chains, 3 more double crochets. All of that is in one chain space from the previous row. So we're going into that corner space from what we did to begin with. Then we're going to do a single chain, because just like we did on the square, if we got a square here, we got a cluster here, when we do this row here, above it will go a chain. Above a space, a chain space, will go a cluster. Above a cluster will go a chain, because they alternate back and forth. So in this chain space where my finger's poking through, I've got 2 already in there. I'm going to put 3, because you need 3 to form a cluster. And we're still in the same chain space, the same corner, but we're at the actual corner. So we're going to do 2 chains and then another cluster into that same space. 1, 2, and I got to pull slack out of the middle of my yarn cake. My yarn cake is off camera. So what I've done so far is worked in 2 of the corners. So this corner and this corner. No, not those type of chains. So in each corner, you're going to have 2 clusters, and in between those 2 clusters will form the corner for that row. In between the corner groupings, which is these 2, will be a single chain, if that kind of makes sense. Put the hook back in the loop. We're above a cluster. The cluster is right here from the previous row. Do a chain, just one, and now we're at the next chain space. So we're going to do 1 cluster, when I'm saying clusters, it makes me want chocolate covered peanut clusters. That sounds good right now. So we did a cluster, but we're in a chain space, in a corner space. So we have to make a corner because our corners are all going to line up. So we do 2 chains, and the next cluster will go in that same chain space. No, I got enough sweets and goodies made already, and no, I don't need them. I'm actually, what I need to be making tomorrow is I'm going to be making a cake. So now we're halfway down this row. So we've done this corner, and this corner. We formed 3 corners. 1, 2, 3. I don't know if you've ever had it. If you've ever been over here, you might have had it when you've been here before. It's a well, it's not a family recipe. Well, it kind of is. We didn't make it. My mom found it years ago and somewhere. It's called Jewish sour cream coffee cake. And traditionally, not every year, but a lot of times we have it on Christmas morning. Yes, we have a Jewish cake on Christmas. I don't know why it's Jewish. There is sour cream in it, but it's so good. It's got like a nut, cinnamon, sugar type topping, and in the middle there's some, and yeah. So now it's really good. So now we have come to basically a side, because we're at a cluster. We're going to do a chain, and now we're in. We just had enchiladas, and they were spicy, but they were good. So now we're at a chain, not a chain, a corner space, which means we put in a cluster. 1, 2, and 3. Let me just check something over here. Okay. And now, since we're in a corner, we need to make the corner of this row, which is 2 chains. And now to finish off that corner will be another cluster in that same chain space. You just do the same thing as you go around. And when you're doing it, it's going to curl and be all wavy. We'll deal with that later. So now we've done 4 sides, or 4 corners at least. So again, we're working on top of a cluster, which means we do a single crochet, and then in the next corner space, we do a cluster. So it's a cluster again, a cluster of 3. I gotta keep pulling out this yarn. So we have a cluster of 3, 2 chains, another cluster of 3. And I hope this is coming across pretty good. Let's see. Oh, went off camera. There, that might be a little better. So let's see what we have so far. We've got a corner, the third, the fourth, and the fifth. Now we have to make the fifth corner to finish up the hexagon. And see, if you once you flatten it out and you move things a little bit, it won't be as wavy. So this is our last section. So we're above a cluster. Between my thumbs is a cluster. We're going to do a single crochet, and then in our last corner chain space, which is right there, we're going to do a cluster of 3. Two chains to actually make the actual corner, and then our last cluster, 2 and 3, and then all we have left is this. So we're above a cluster, so we're going to do a single, and now to join the top of this first double crochet, which actually was a series of 3 chains, the very top of that, we're going to do a slip stitch to join, just like you do any type of round. To join a round, you just do a slip stitch, and that's as big as and if you wanted, you can do bigger. You could do 3, 4, 5. You could make a blanket, hexagon shaped blanket, if you wanted to. Same thing with what I was doing before the other day with the square. You could keep going and going and going and going and going. Or you could do individual ones. And I'm going to clip my yarn here, and we're going to finish off. We're not changing colors on this one. And I'm just, same way, you just pick up the tail, bring it through that loop all the way through, pull it tight, then weave it in. And in the center here, since when we were starting, we were locking our tail in, we don't really got to weave that one in because that's already been locked in through most of these stitches. And then if you make a bunch of these and you have the same size yarn, which these yarns are slightly off, this yarn is a little bit thinner than this yarn, so it's not going to match up. And this is both 2 rounds on the same hook. That's proof how you could see that the size of yarn makes a difference. But if these were the exact same size yarn, or with this you could stretch it a little, it's going to be distorted. Then if you wanted to, you could sew them together. And then you take a third one and put it here in this space, and then it'll be like honeycombs. And then you can make a blanket that way. And there are ways to make a half a hexagon, which I'm not going to demonstrate here. But if you wanted it to be, the edges to be straight and even, like a blanket, you could do that. Or if not, you can have your edges just hexagons. So that's hexagons. Now we're going to make octagon. This one is different, starting out differently than how the hexagon and the square started. This one, the center hole doesn't matter as much. You could have it open like this. You can have it open like I did with the hexagons and the squares. See how the center hole is pretty open. But you're going to be putting a lot of stitches in there. So with this one, I'm doing the magic ring. And I'm going to, I don't know if anybody saw the video, one of my first videos from weeks ago, I was showing the magic ring. This is the magic ring. I gotta remember, yeah. So you're going, it kind of does. So to make the magic ring, and this makes starting out so much easier. You don't got to worry about chaining to make that center loop. So to start out, you put the tail in your hand. Oh, spelling doesn't count. And then you're going to take it and you're going to wrap it around your finger like this. So it's going to cross over on the palm side of your fingers. And you're going to wrap it over to the back and you're just going to hold it like this. Then what you're going to do is you're going to grab not the first strand, but the second strand. Wait a minute. Yeah. The second strand. Nope, that. Let me try it again. So you're going to grab it like this. Yeah. You're going to grab under the first strand and pick up that second strand. And you're going to loosely hold it right here. And that right here is your see this big circle that we've got here? That's the magic ring, the starting of the magic ring. And starting this out sometimes can be difficult. And it doesn't matter how big the loop is. See how the loop is pretty big? That's fine. You just want to carefully keep these strands together that are here. And you've got the loop already on the hook. And we are going to do 8 double crochets into the magic ring. Size does not matter. So we're going to do a double crochet. So I got to look at something real quick. Yeah. So we need to chain 3, because 3 chains equal double crochet. So there's the double crochet. We still have our magic ring here. You want to keep these strands twisted the way they are. And hold your finger right here at the base of the chain where it meets the magic ring, right in this area. And you're going to do 7 more double crochets into that magic ring. Okay? You've got a large enough ring here to put the hook through. You don't really got to go looking for it. So we got 2. We need 6 more. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and there we got 8, okay? Those are 8 double crochets. Wait a minute. Yeah, those are 8 double crochets. And why does it magic? So what you do is you hold your stitches in your one hand, and with your other hand, this little tail here, you pull. Now watch the magic. So you're going to pull, and it closes that hole up, and now what we're going to do is we're going to slip stitch, and basically we're joining to the very first one that we made. You could slip stitch and join and then pull the magic ring. Oops. If I can get it. What, the magic ring? It took me a while to figure out how to make the magic ring. But once I figured it out, I'm like, oh my god. This is good if you don't want an open hole in the center of your granny square or your hexagon or whatever it is. So now, right where those tweezers are pointing, that's the center of the magic ring. It's like a drawstring. We have 8 double crochets. Around. Now, the next row, what we're going to do is we're going to chain 3. Again, it's double crochets. And in each stitch, so we have a stitch here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Wait a minute. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I might have had 7 in there. Oops. Wait a minute. Let me double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, yeah, there's 8. In each of these stitches, you're going to do a double crochet. So that those chain 3 count as a double crochet. You're going to chain 1, and then you're going to do a double crochet all in that same stitch. So you're kind of making like a V shape. You got a double crochet, a chain stitch, and a double crochet all in that same stitch. And you're going to do that for each individual stitch from the previous row. So here's our stitch right between my thumbs. We're going to do a double crochet into that stitch, do a chain, and then a double crochet again in that same stitch. This time we're going in the stitch, not the chain space, because there is no chain space. All it is double crochets. So we've done 2 of those. Now we have, should be 6 more. 2. Wait a minute, let me just double check this. I think we got it. So in the next stitch, we're going to do a double, a chain, and a double still in that stitch. That's kind of what, I don't know if this is really coming through. In this stitch here, we've got a double, a chain, and a double. So it kind of forms a V. And then this one here has got a double, a chain, and a double. All we're doing is we're really increasing. We had 8 stitches in this round, and if each of those stitches are getting 2, we're going to get 16 double crochets. But in between every other one will be a chain stitch. So we're not chaining now. We're doing a double crochet into the next stitch. Once you've gone into the stitch, then we do a chain, then we do another double. Okay, we got another stitch right here. We're doing a double. Yes, I am crocheting wrong, CGAM. Thank you. So we have a double, a chain stitch, and another double. Let me pull out some of my yarn. And then, so we've done, that's 1 grouping, 2, 3, 4, 5. We can get 3 more groupings in here. So in this stitch, we're going to do a double, a chain, and a double. And now we still have 2 more stitches here. And we always we're doing this in groups of 8 for this round. So these 2 count as 1 because they go into the 1 stitch. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 groups. We've got 2 more stitches. So we've counted right. And if you don't count right, you can easily slip in another stitch or 2 to make your math right. So you don't have to rip it all out. If you want to rip it all out at this stage, it's fine. But once you get so big, if you're like, oh crap, my math was off, add a stitch here and there. No one's going to know. So we're doing a double, a chain, and a double. And now our last one goes into this last stitch. We're doing a double, a chain, and a double. We're at the end of the row. So to end the row, we slip stitch into the top of the very first double crochet we had. And we have done round 2. But you're like, that's a circle, not an octagon. Well, we have to get a certain size to get all the stitches in. If you wanted to do a circle, you could keep doing this. It's just the next row, you would increase the stitches. There's different ways of doing it. And you want to make corners. But we're going to do the corners real soon. So now we've got 2 double crochets here. We've got a chain space. We've got 2 double crochets. We've got a chain space. 2 double crochet, and so on. So we're only going to worry about the chain spaces, not the actual double crochets that are here. So we're doing double crochet, so we're going to chain 3. Okay, glad you could stop by. Catch you guys later. So we did double crochet. We're going to do another double crochet, but in that chain space. Oh, well, I didn't know. Okay, well, you want me to get out the sad green yarn? So we have 2 double crochets in that chain space. We're going to chain 2, and then 2 more double crochets in that same chain space. So that's what we've made. In this chain space, I'm not doing Christmas tree. Christmas ornaments are done. No more Christmas ornaments. So we have a chain space here. We're doing 2 double crochets, 2 chains, and 2 double crochets in this one chain space. We're going to repeat that all the way around. So we're going to skip these next 2 stitches, and we're going to go to this chain space. Get the yarn in the hook, the hook in the yarn. We're in this next chain space. So we're going to do 2 double crochets. Two chains and 2 double crochets. Now we go to the next chain space. Again, we skip the next 2 actual stitches and we go to the next chain space. Do 2 double crochets. Two chains, and then 2 more double crochets. Skip the next 2 stitches that are here. We're going to that chain space. Again, 2 double, 2 chain, and then 2 double. Just like the hexagon, to make a corner, we did 2 chains. Same thing's happening here when we do the 2 chains in between these 2 doubles. That is forming the corner of the octagon. So we got the chain space here. Do 2 double. Now we're doing the 2 chain. The 2 chain again forming the corner. 2 more double. The next chain space, 2 double. If I'm going too fast, let me know. It's 2 double there, 2 chain, and then 2 double. I got a couple more groupings to do. These aren't really clusters. They're not like the square and the hexagon. In this chain space here, 2 double. If I can form the stitch. Two chains. And then 2 double. And now we have one last chain space for this round. And we'll do 2 double crochet, 2 chains, and 1, 2 double crochet, and then slip stitch into the top of that very first double crochet. And there we've made our 3rd round, and now we have an octagon shape. Take a drink of water. Now, for row 4, in this chain space, so these the corners of the octagon. So in the corners, we're going to do a double crochet, 2 chains, and a double crochet. So let's start with that. Actually, I'm not at a corner, so I'm going to slip stitch to the corner. I like starting in the corner because it's just easier. So I'm now in the corner. So it's a double crochet, 2 chains, and a double crochet. But to make a double crochet, you got to first chain 3. That's our double. Then we add 2 more chains for our corner, and then our double crochet into that chain space. And that's our chain space. Then, in these stitches here, it's not these stitches. It's in between these stitches. So on this side here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 double crochets. It's the spaces in between we're going to be stitching. So we're not stitching into the tops of the stitches. It's the spaces in between the stitches, if that makes sense. And to do this, between the first 2 here, we're doing a double crochet. Simple double crochet. In this one, we're doing something called a half triple crochet. And get fancy here. So we're going to wrap our yarn around the hook twice. So technically we now have 3 loops on the hook into the chain space, not into the chain stitch, but into that big hole that's there. Yarn over, bring it through. Now we have 4 on the hook. We're going to yarn over and go through the first 2. Now we have 3 on the hook. Yarn over through the last 3. That is a half triple. And then in between the next 2 stitches, we're just going to do a regular double. So, in the corner, it's a double, 2 chain, and a double. Then in between the next 2 stitches, it's a double. In the next space, we do a half triple. And then in the next space, which is in between these 2 stitches, we do a double. It's a little complicated on this round. And then we keep repeating. So we're now in a corner space. We're going to do a double, 2 chains, and a double. The corners are easy. Then in between these stitches, not in the top of the stitch, but down here in between the 2 stitches, we're going to do a double. And then in between these next 2 stitches, we'll do a half triple, which is wrap twice, insert, yarn over, bring through, 4 loops on the hook, yarn over through the first 2. Now we have 3 on the hook, yarn over through the last 3. And then in between the next 2 stitches, we'll do a double. So it's all doubles, except for the chains on the corner, and that center one on the sides is a half triple. At the corner again, we'll do a double crochet, 2 chains. 2 chains forms the corner, and then another double to finish off the corner. Now we're on a side. To do the side, again, the same thing. In between the stitches, do a double. In between these stitches, do a half triple, which is wrap twice. I'll show that again. Yarn over, bring through. So now we have 4 loops on the hook. Yarn over through the first 2. Now we have 3 on the hook. Yarn over through all 3. part, so I'll do it again. Wrap it twice into the hole, yarn over. We have 4 on the hook, yarn over through the first 2, 3 on the hook, yarn over through the last 4. Again, that's the tricky stitch. We'll do a double in between these next 2, and that brings us to the corner again. So it's a double, 2 chains, and a double. Back to a side again. In between the first 2 stitches, do a double. We're back to that middle one. So we do a half triple. So wrap it twice in, yarn over, bring through, yarn over through the first 2, yarn over through the last 3. Next, in between the next 2 stitches, do a double. And now we're at the corner again, which means a double, 2 chains, and another double. So we're growing the octagon bigger. We're at a side again. So in between these next stitches goes a double. It's all repetitive because it's 8 sides. We're in that middle one, do a half triple. I'm not going to go through step by step to do that one again because I've already done it 4 times, 5 times, however many times. And do a double in between the next 2. We're at the corner. Do a double, 2 chain, and then 1 last double, again, all in that space. We got a couple more to do, and then we'll be done this round. And after this round, there will be 1 more round, and the last round is really easy. A double into between those first 2 stitches. If I could get the yarn and the hook to cooperate. Now we're doing a half triple. Half triple is a stitch you're not really going to do that often. Next will be a double in between those stitches. We're at a corner. So we only got 2 more corners to do. So we're going to do a double in there, 2 chain, and then a double again. Come to the side again. So again, double in between the first 2 stitches. Okay, catch you later. Between the next 2 stitches, do a half triple. And then between the next 2 stitches, we do a double. Now we're at a corner, our last corner, which is a double, 2 chains, and then a double. And our very last side for this round. Between the first 2 stitches, again, same thing, 2 doubles. Between the next 2, do a half triple. And the next 2, do a double. And now we're at the end, and we're going to slip stitch into the top of that very first one. And we're growing our our octagon. The next one will be our last row, and this is super easy. This is the finishing off round, and all it is single crochet. In each corner, you're going to do 3 single crochets, and then 1 in each stitch. There's 5. So if you want to count, that was 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then we come to a corner, which is a chain space. We do 3. 1, 2, and 3. And then we're going to do 5. Wait, what happened to my stream? It started over. That's weird. Yeah, that's weird. I'll continue. So now we're going to do a single into each stitch. Yeah, it just said my session started over. It's counting up again from 0. I guess Twitch had a hiccup. And now we're at the corner again. We do 3 singles. And now we're at a side, and each stitch gets a single crochet stitch. Just like you're doing regular rows back and forth. Corner, you do 3. Side, each one gets one. Corner, so we get 3. We're getting there. We got to go all the way around, about halfway around. There. Oh, pretty close to the end of this round. Three singles. We're at the very last side. So each one, again, each stitch gets a single crochet. And our last stitch right in here. Last stitch is right there. And then we're going to slip stitch into our very first one we did to finish it. And we're going to clip it off. Just like we're going to finish any of them. You just grab that tail, bring it all the way through, and pull it tight. And then obviously weave your tails in. And then what you can do is we're going to zoom the camera out. You can join them like so. Imagine I had 2 more here, but we'd have an empty space in here. But if we had a square, and this is a simple granny square, you go around twice, and that will fit in there. Imagine it's a different color, and you have 2 more octagons here. You can fill up the pattern. So to recap, We started with granny squares the other day. And this is just a smaller granny square. Instead of going around 3, I went around twice with that one. Then we've got our hexagons. And then we got our octagons. And again, if you wanted to join them together and you didn't want holes where they all met, make small little squares like I just showed you. Switch back to this, and we're going to put all of our little creations away. I'm going to put that creation, all of my mess I made over here earlier. Now, we'll talk about my socials. Remember to follow me if you enjoy this content. Again, stay tuned to January. There's a couple different things in the works. It's not always going to be crochet, like I said. Follow me if you like. Tell your friends. My socials are somewhere down below. I have YouTube videos, Twitter, and Instagram. I need to upload to Twitter and Instagram more. I'm not that good with that. So I think we're going to call it a night tonight. It'll be a somewhat early night. Again, I don't know what happened with the stream where it just like reset. So I don't know if I'm still getting, if it's still going to be one continuous video, but anyway. There will not be any streams this Saturday or Sunday because of the holiday. Next stream will be Tuesday. I'm still thinking 8 o'clock. Not exactly certain what we're going to do Tuesday, but I got almost a week to figure that out. But I'll come up with something. Have a happy holiday, whatever holiday you happen to celebrate, and I will see you on Tuesday.